Hey, vinyl community, how we doing? I wanted to come on and do a little bit of a year-end video. I haven't been very active lately. I thought this would be a nice way to reconnect a little bit and summarize my year in vinyl. Yeah, a little bit at the risk of interfering with the vinyl tag. I do want to do the vinyl tag and kind of year in review kind of thing. But anyway, the hell with it. I'm going to do it anyway, yeah? I pulled out a stack here. I think it's 11 albums if I count it right. So I'm just going to jump into them. My year in review, yeah. So kind of like the best albums, yeah. The best of 2023 and my collecting life. All added to my collection this year. So back in September of last year, my birthday in 2022, I got a subscription to Vinyl Me Please. My wife gave me a subscription. I extended that subscription into 2023. And this was January's edition. Erykah Badu's Mama's Gun. Lovely album. I knew of the album. It's kind of neo-soul, Soulquarians era, if you're into sort of hip-hop, with the Roots and others. Yeah, great album. And this got a lot of play this year. I really, really, really enjoyed this album. It's a great album from Erykah Badu, Mama's Gun, starting off my year. I moved back to Canada this year, purchased this house, my parents' house, my house I grew up in, and with the house I got mom and dad's old record collection. And so this old ratty copy of Woodstock was theirs, so it's barely hanging together here. And I just love having this in my collection now. When I think back to my parents' collection, this is the one album that kind of stands out. It was a trifold, right? I never saw that before, a trifold album. It's not in the best of shape, but it was theirs. Now it's mine. There's a few other gems in their collection that I got as well. But, you know, this is one. The record's not in the best condition. It's also one of those ones that was made for like an automatic record player, so that the sides are odd. I can't remember, there's a name for that, but anyway. So that's another one this year that I added to my collection. Nostalgia, right? And it's just a good album, so. Also with Nostalgia, on Record Store Day, the Canadian ambassadors were these fellas, Our Lady Peace. This was like the sound of my high school, I guess, yeah, late high school. Superman's Dead, Clumsy, 4 a.m., Somewhere Out There, Innocent. This takes me back to a time and place, and just great rock music. I used to have their CDs. I'm just looking at my CD stand. I think I have one or two of their CDs left. I used to have more. So to have this on vinyl as a collection was a no-brainer for me from Record Store Day. The first time I got to do Record Store Day back here in Canada, so that was pretty cool. Technically purchased in 2022 as well, but it was purchased after I sent my collection to Canada and I was still living abroad. And so I bought this when I saw it, but it also got shipped to Canada at a later date. So I don't think I was reunited with this until maybe March. So this is Slippery When Wet with the alternative cover that was available outside of North America and Japan. This one's the Japanese one. I think a few places in Europe as well. So that was a nice one to have added to my collection. A great album, classic album from Bon Jovi. I'm just getting over a cold. I've been sick most of Christmas. So Merry Christmas to everyone. Happy New Year, by the way. Yeah, Living on a Prayer, Want It Dead or Alive. What else are the good ones on here? Let It Rock, You Give Love a Bad Name. Yeah, just classic album. And it was the alternative cover that I wanted, right? So that was a great find when I found it. In the summer, a gentleman was selling off his whole collection. He had some really great stuff, selling them all out for $5 a piece. I picked up this one, AC/DC. I showed this in another video. I think, top 10 most valuable records. Because on this red vinyl. It is an OG Canadian pressing. But yeah, apparently it's worth quite a bit. You know, nothing mind-blowing. I think it was $150, $160, something like that. So a nice find for $5, right? So I had to add that into my top acquisitions of this year. Great album as well, but it's the fact that I got it for so cheap and it's worth money that makes it stand out in my memory from this year. Tragically Hip, another Canadian rock band, a little earlier than Our Lady of Peace. These are biggest, most memorable stuff came out in the 80s. I own most of their catalog on CD, but I had nothing on vinyl. So I've been on the lookout for some Tragically Hip on vinyl for a long time. Found this last month, I think, maybe early December, late November, at Winners of all places. So I don't know if Winners is a global, is in the US or not. Anyway, what they do is they buy like overstock and maybe like slightly damaged goods and that kind of stuff and resell them. So this was there on sale for like 30 Canadian dollars. So like it normally goes for closer to 50. So I was quite happy to see that at a decent price. My favorite Tragically Hip album. Just absolute banger there. So I'll add that to the collection. Maybe I'll do these two together. I'm a big Bob Marley fan, and excuse me, it's always nice to find newly released Bob Marley music. Yeah, and so this actually was released in 2022. This was released 2023, but both came into my collection this year. This was early in the year. So this is Bob Marley's vocals with this orchestra providing the music. Beautiful combination. They do an absolutely outstanding job, this orchestra, and it just goes together so well, and I love the arrangements they put on it. It's well produced. Love that album. Similar idea here. So I picked this up on a trip to Halifax the end of the summer at Taz Records. Excuse me again. So this is, what would you call this? Not duets. Yeah, maybe. Reimagining some of Bob's most popular songs with modern day artists out of Africa. I don't know any of the artists on here, or rather I didn't before listening to this. I've since looked up a few more of them, and it's great stuff. So it's an introduction into new music for me, which is great, which is probably why they do things like this. But just some really, really beautiful versions. The Redemption song on here is done really well. Some of them are like, Bob will do a verse, and then the African person will do a verse. And sometimes they're very close to the original, and sometimes they're completely different from the original. Really, really, really enjoyable. Sticking on the reggae vibe, here we have Jamila. This was a great find for me. Maybe one of my favorites this year. She signed it for me. I bought it from her Bandcamp. And so I think you paid an extra $5 or something in the sign. She has a lovely little note too with it. Roots Girl, classic roots reggae, local, from Halifax, of Jamaican descent. Her father, Earl Gina Smith, a reggae legend. Her herself has been in the reggae scene most of her life. Just an absolute great album. In fact, I'm going to do a whole album review on this. It's such a good album. I absolutely love it. Jamila. Sticking on the local vibe, this is Adam Baldwin out of Nova Scotia. Adam Baldwin. So this came out in 2022 as well, but I was too cheap to get it shipped, knowing that Adam would be through town at some point. So I waited for him to come through town. Went to a show. I want to say in like May. April maybe, and picked this up at his show. He's a rocker, but this is more of a folk leaning album. On my Spotify Wrapped, this was the number one thing I listened to, because like I say, it came out in 22 and I waited to get a copy of it. So I listened to it a lot on Spotify first. Number one, and the song that was also number one was Lighthouse in Little Rain. The thing I like about this album is that it's very much of this region. Yeah, it's great, just great songwriting in general, but it's so relatable to me. Like every song on here feels like it's someone I know, right? It's lovely. It's just an absolute awesome album. All right, and then the last album, kind of sneaky. It's going to be 2 albums here. Going back to Bob Marley. So 50th anniversary this year of Catch a Fire, and they did a couple of releases for Catch a Fire. The one I got was this one, Catch a Fire, the Jamaican version. Yeah, so this is Bob Marley and the Wailers. I did a whole video on this, so maybe I'll link it up here somewhere. Without getting into too much detail, this was their first big album that became popular outside of Jamaica, with Island, the first with Island Records, and they first made it in Jamaica. Bob Marley and the Wailers produced it, and then it went to Chris Blackwell, and then it was there were some overdubs put on it, and the track list was shortened a little bit. But this is the original version as it would have been, as it was produced by Bob Marley and the Wailers in Jamaica. So there's a couple extra tracks on here, a few longer tracks and so forth. So absolute great album. High Tide, Low Tide is a real highlight on here for me. They did another release after this one where they packaged the original Island record with the Jamaican version and a live album as well. I didn't pick that up. But what I did find earlier this year, probably like February, March-ish, was the OG first Island pressing with the Basing Street address on the back and the original Zippo cover. Yeah, this was my grail, okay? This was the album I was looking for the longest time, and I found it in really decent shape at what I think was a really reasonable price. I don't know if my wife would agree with that. But anyway, it was a pretty reasonable price for what it was in such good shape. So that was my number 1 find of the year. Not that these were in order, but I wanted to save the best for last. So that's my year in review. I'm going to hop on the vinyl tags, so I hope these aren't all repeated again. But if they are, so what? There's only like 10 of you that watch these videos anyway. So, all right, so Happy New Year, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, lots of love from young LP lovers. Peace.